Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Movie Nights Roundtable Live. Thank you so much for joining us. It is, of course, myself, Dalton Burdett, and the amazing Nicholas Iricchio. Nick, how are you, my friend?
Good, how are you, buddy?
Good. We have a super fun show for you guys today. We got a couple of news stories to dive into, and then at the end, we're going to end things off, I should say, with a couple movie reviews. We were fortunate enough to see some movies this past... we actually did a double feature yesterday, and I'm still mentally recovering from it because I'm in my late 20s, and my body can't do that anymore. But
I am exhausted.
yeah, no, I feel you. But guys, like I said, lots of fun stuff to do. But before we dive into it, we are less than 100 subscribers away from 5,000 subscribers, which is not a lot. But with your help, we can get there. So please consider subscribing. It is a lot to us. So please consider subscribing to the channel and giving a like to the video so that we can do more live shows and, be able to do a lot more things for you guys because we love doing the show. But with that down, guys, as I mentioned, we have a lot of stuff to get into. Cut to Nick's amazing PowerPoint, which we love. We love very much. Now, you guys may know that I am quite the fan of the Scream franchise. It is a franchise that's very near and dear to my heart, and it is a franchise that I think you could argue doesn't have bad entries. Yes, I know the third film exists, but the more I revisit Scream 3, the more I enjoy it. I still think it's the weakest film, but the more I visit it, the more fun I have with it. We all know that Scream 7 is coming, and it's no subject to controversy. Melissa Barrera was very infamously fired over some political beliefs, which I'm not a big fan of, that firing. Jenna Ortega also dropped out due to scheduling conflicts with Wednesday, but she's also been very vocal about not being a fan of that happening to Melissa. You have two of the core four coming back in Yasmin Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding, but you also have original players Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox coming back. And guys, we just got huge news on two big key returners for Scream 7. Ladies and gentlemen, it finally happened. Stu Macher is back. Matthew Lillard is returning to Scream in Scream 7, confirmed by Deadline. Spoilers ahead if you've never seen Scream, and please do yourself the favor and watch that film. Obviously, Matthew Lillard plays Stu Macher in the original. He was one of two Ghostface killers, and he was quote-unquote killed by Sidney dropping a TV on his head. I'm not going to go into the Deadline article, but the link is there. That is the source, and the reason I'm not going into it is because it basically just says, we have no idea to what capacity he's in it. We just know he is. So you got to respect it at some point when the people who make the articles kind of come up with that. But Nick, before I throw it over to you, this really shocked me because it almost feels like the franchise has spent years saying that he was never going to return because fans obviously have wanted that for a while. And to be fair, it does not go into him, like how he's returning, if he's alive, if it's like an extended flashback sequence, which I'm going to get to something in a second that shows evidence of that maybe being the case. But this is just very surprising. And, I kind of want to throw it over to you now. What do you think of Stu Macher coming back into the Scream franchise, played by Matthew Lillard?
I think that with the firing of Melissa Barrera and, Jenna Ortega's quote-unquote scheduling conflicts with Wednesday Season 2, they brought Cindy back. Oh my God, I cannot speak today. I'm so sorry, guys.
You're doing great,
they brought
buddy.
back Cindy, and I think that was a big return for the franchise, especially after the contract disputes and everything. But I feel like they are doing with the franchise a lot of recovery. So why not bring back, these, I don't want to call them stunt castings, but, these big headline like Scream 7's all over the news because of this. Because everyone has that affection for Matthew Lillard. It's what made him a huge star, gave him that huge opportunity. And Five Nights at Freddy's, we know how that went, so I'm sure he's looking to get something back on the radar that has people excited, that has people energized. And I mean, we're going to go into it a little bit in our next story here on it, but they've already established these sort of ghostly flashbacks. We had Skeet Ulrich in Scream 5 and 6, just as sort of that illusion that Melissa Barrera's character was seeing because of her connection to it. So I could see it maybe something like that. I don't know if I'm necessarily fully on board with like Stu's alive, unless they kind of maybe take it oh my God, what's his name? From Sabretooth.
Oh, Liev Schreiber?
Liev Schreiber, maybe
Cotton
they do
Ruri,
something
yeah.
like that where he's sort of like a red herring that they throw in there. Could be interesting, but I think they're just going to go sort of that ghostly apparition route with it. And I'm not upset to see Matthew Lillard in something.
Yeah.
I think it does have some red flags for just, it's reminiscent kind of not at the same level, but right, like Robert Downey Jr. back as Doctor Doom. We're like, oh, what's gonna make the headlines? Is it necessarily a red flag in the bad direction? Are we cooked here, or are we going somewhere? Maybe just give the people what they want. That I don't know.
So you bring up a few interesting points. One of them being that this could just be a ghostly apparition, which I honestly didn't even think about, like how they did with Billy Loomis and the other films. This is something that could also be, as you mentioned, a red herring. I really like that idea of Stu is alive, so naturally everyone kind of perks up like, oh shit, he's the guy, he's doing it, and maybe he's just on a farm with a new family, and he's trying to live a new life, and they're like, hey, please don't turn me into the cops, like I'm a different person. Like, that would be an interesting dynamic, like it would be cool to see. Again, I also don't know what route they're going to go, but guys, the news go ahead.
Nope, I'll actually save it for the next story. I think it's a better point.
Okay, so moving on to the second part of the Scream 7 news, he's not the only person returning, and just a heads up, he's also not the only Ghostface returning, because in a wild twist of events, you got Roman Bridger coming back too. And before you do that, here's a nice little video of the announcement from Matthew Lillard's social.
Oh yeah, Dalton, I added that to the PowerPoint.
Thank you, buddy.
That's my bad.
You're good. But moving on. Scott Foley, who played Roman Bridger, is also coming back for Scream 7. Played Sidney's half-brother. Oh, I forgot about that part. But that did happen. But he, was dead, obviously, like Stu. But also, you got to give credit where it's due. He's the only Ghostface killer that did it by himself. And you know what? You got to hand it to him. Although I didn't love the backstory of him, learning from Billy and Stu, which is why it makes me think it could be an extended flashback sequence. But this one's more shocking, and this, to me, also may point to evidence that it is an extended flashback. So I kind of want to get your thoughts, because you're about to go into a point on this. What does this mean to you?
I think that it's going to be a Rey becoming a Jedi situation where all the Jedi flow through her. And we hear all the voices and scenes, and Cindy's going to be the killer.
Nick, why would you put that into the universe? Can I just ask you that? Why would you put that into the universe?
Because it'd be funny.
I don't know.
She ends up being in a very abusive relationship with her husband, Joel McHale's character, and she finally snaps and becomes the killer.
No, I don't think it's going to happen at all. I think that Sidney Prescott is a survivor, and, she kind of reminds me of Ash Williams a little bit, in that the whole point of the character is that they carry on. That's kind of the whole thing. It's not like with other franchises and other legacy franchises where, you could afford to kill off the character to build a new story. You could build new stories in the Scream world, like how 5 and 6 did, but I don't think you can kill Sidney Prescott, and I don't think you can make her a Ghostface, just because it would almost seem like a fundamental betrayal of that character. And Kevin Williamson, the creator of Scream, is directing the movie, so that would shock me very much so. But what's funny about Scott Foley coming back is I made a comment last time we talked about Scream 7, and I was like, maybe Kevin Williamson just doesn't want anything to do with Scream 3 because it's the only one he didn't write. Well, fuck that. Here comes Scott Foley. He doesn't matter. So I was wrong about that. But yeah, this news, it is surprising to me, and I think it could lead to a lot of interesting story ideas. I am just curious as to where it's going to go. Other than that, do you have any final thoughts on the Scream 7 news before we move on?
No, not really. I mean, this is a franchise that anyone that's watched the show and listened to us, that we very much enjoy, that we love, even the highs and the lows of it.
Yes.
So, I think that seeing these castings does get me excited, but it does come with a little bit of hesitation on my part of, where are we going with this? What does it look like? And are they making a big show of this for it to be like a 2-minute flashback or ghostly apparition,
Yeah, because what's funny is I almost feel like Scott Foley was broken to the trades in an effort to hide Matthew Lillard, and then they reported Matthew Lillard anyway, and then the studio kind of had to be like, fuck, let's just announce it then and get out ahead of it. Which the video posted by Matthew Lillard makes me think he's got somewhat of a bigger role, unless he did that without telling anyone, which would be funny. But whether or not that bigger role is Ghostface or not, because like you mentioned, I think it would be a very interesting idea if he wasn't Ghostface, if he was a red herring. I do think that would be an interesting idea. But either way, guys, what do you think of the returns for Scream 7? Does this make you more excited for the movie? Let us know in the comments as we move on to our next story. And Nicholas, we have quite the interesting next story to get into. And you know what? I'm going to let you run with this story. Okay?
Oh, boy.
I'm going to give it a pause so that I can just perfectly give you time to set this up. Because as people know, anyone who's watched this show for any period of time knows, this one's important to you, buddy.
It is. Well, everyone that knows my favorite movie of all time is Con Air, starring Nicolas Cage. And while this is unfortunately not a confirmation in that a sequel is officially greenlit, they did catch up with the director, and they were asking him about it. And he has a great quote here. They asked him about the possibility of it, and he said, "Definitely, I would always do anything with Nick Cage. I'm a huge fan of Nick Cage. I have a great affection for Con Air, and I think he does too. We've talked about it before, and I think if it's done right and we have a great script, and we get as many people back as possible, I think it would be fun." Now, the reason we're also bringing this up, right, is because Nick Cage has been popping up in a lot more stuff lately. Most recently coming out soon, it has not started filming yet, but we are going to have a legacy sequel to Face Off with him and I believe John Travolta confirmed to be returning. So everyone's sort of looking at, if you think about Nick Cage's career, Face Off, Con Air, and The Rock, I don't remember what order particularly they came out in, but that was a 3-run theatrical release on Nick Cage in like the same year and a half. So if he's looking at stuff and revisit stuff from that time period, I think Con Air's prime for it. Cameron Poe's a great character. He's a great hero, great lead. You have a good number of supporting cast, but it's also a character you can easily just drop into any situation. I have always voted SS Con, where they're on a boat. But the director's talked about going crazy. He's saying underwater, space. He goes, the movie's ridiculous and fun, and I think it should stay with that. So, unfortunately, it is not a confirmation of a sequel, but it is clearly something that is been on Simon West, the director's mind, and something that he's not open to returning to. And I think that is a great positive.
So if you're Nicolas Cage and Simon
Yes.
West comes to you with a Con Air 2 script, and this is post-Pig Nicolas Cage, post, kind of getting his career back on track.
Unbearable weight of massive talent.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would even say Renfield. But, this is new Nick Cage. And Simon West comes to you and says, "Hey, we got a script for Con Air 2. It's ridiculous. It's fun. We're giving you a bunch of money." Do you think Nick Cage says yes?
I think it's really going to be something that depends on the script, or really something what they're able to bring to it. Because Nick Cage has been always very vocal about when he selects roles. Sometimes he's just interested in working with an actor he hasn't worked with. Sometimes that's a director, and sometimes it's just the script. Like, I think Face Off is probably something. It's either a movie that he really likes and wants to return to, or I believe isn't Adam Wingard directing it?
Yeah, that's
He
right.
did all the Godzilla and Godzilla Kong movies, which Nick Cage has openly spoken about his love for Godzilla before and that franchise. So I think that then Adam Wingard having this opportunity involvement was of great interest to him. So I think with this one, I think he really enjoyed working with Simon West. I think it comes down to what cast are they going to have back. He's worked with John Cusack a lot, which I don't think they could pay him any amount of money to come back to that, because he's spoken about hating filming that movie. So I really think that one comes down to script, and if he's looking to just have some fun, and if, the internet consensus, I don't know where the internet lands on Con Air. I know Face Off kind of usually leads the conversation, but I think he'd be open to it if the circumstances were right.
As a fan, you see a report in the trades saying that this movie is official. How excited are you?
Oh, I'm amped. It's one of those things, bias aside, it's one of those things. I think I'm on the side of the coin where I'm a fan. It's my favorite movie. Sometimes you get that, oh, we don't need a sequel, or, oh, just let it exist. I'd be amped for it. I think it's ridiculous and goofy enough that why not do a sequel, right?
I'm with you, although selfishly, I'm cool with this as long as there's enough time in the schedule for him to come back as Ghost Rider for Secret Wars. That's all I'm saying. And
I just,
leave it to me to bring it back to comic books, but I'd like to see
but
that happen.
But I think if you're looking at him, right, like Face Off, I think Con Air is more deserving of a sequel than Face Off. I think Face Off's a cool
Fair.
concept, but I think if you're looking at the character, the lead, the character it leads to, I think that it's a much more accessible in for a sequel than any of the others.
That's fair, but I think Face Off was more prime for a reboot, which is why I'm surprised that they're both coming back. Unless there's going to be two new characters doing the Face Off, and then Travolta and Cage are just back in it separately, then that makes more sense to me, which is why I could see them going that route first. But for a sequel, 100%, I think Con Air was the right choice for that period of time.
I think there just needs to be a face-off every theater. Let's get some new actors. Let's get some new directors. Let's get people swapping faces and see what happens.
Yes. Or we could do The Rock 2, where Nick Cage is like the Sean Connery part, and we get a new young upcoming actor to play the Nick Cage part. You know, I'm in. I'm in for that. As long as Michael Bay comes back, I'm in for that, 100%. But guys, what do you think about the potential of a Con Air 2 happening? This is far from confirmation. It was just kind of the director saying that he'd be down for it if Nick's down for it. What do you guys think? Please let us know in the comments as we move on to our next story. And guys, this is a story that I may get passionate or heated about. Who knows? I'm going to try to hold it back a little bit. But Nielsen, which is a famous company that does the ratings for streaming services, has finally come out with their chart of the most streamed movies of 2024. You know, they do shows as well, but, you know, we're going to focus on the movie part. And I just want to say, to no one's surprise, to nobody's fucking surprise, the top 10 streaming movies, which I'm going to pull up now, all of them were first theatrical releases. Every single one of them. Guys, the streaming services will never learn. If you want your movie to do better on streaming, release it in theaters first. The top 10 streaming movies of 2024 were all theatrical releases. All of them. And it's crazy. I'm going to pull up this chart again. Number 1 was Moana, which, by the way, I think that's like 3 fucking years in a row that Moana has been the number 1 most streaming movie, which is why when I would argue with people way back when, I'm sure you remember, Nicholas, I would say Moana 2 is going to make $1 billion, and people were like, oh, no, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, people constantly watch this fucking movie. Like, everyone does.
It's
like,
actually insane that year over year, it is the most streamed movie, and they still felt the need to develop the sequel as a TV series.
Dude, yes.
It's
dude,
just so out of touch.
You could make a documentary about the dumb decisions that Bob Chapek made. And, like, just Iger coming in and being like, what the hell are we doing here? Movie now. Like, just making it a movie. You also have in second the Super Mario Brothers movie, theatrical release. Red One, a theatrical release. Trolls Band Together, theatrical release. Minions, theatrical release. Encanto, Frozen, Paw Patrol, Inside Out, The Boss Baby. Now, you may see a trend here of it mostly being kids' films. And yes, that's true. But guess what? If you release a kid's film direct to streaming, it just flattens and dies. There's no life for it to grow. You have to go release in theaters to hit the pop cultural zeitgeist. Then you can get released on streaming and be the top 10 most streamed movies of all time. And I know there are some people that are going to say, well, Red One was kind of an Amazon movie. It was supposed to go to streaming. Yeah, they put it in theaters first because they knew about this. Amazon's the only one that can really get credit here. And yes, it didn't make its money back because they paid people's back-end deals out, and so the budget ballooned. But what was the end result? It being the third most streamed movie of the year on the service for the company that made it in the midst of children's films. It's not rocket science. Just put the damn movies in theaters. My rant's over, Nicholas. Your turn.
Well, I mean, there's so... if you think about it at a higher level, right? Yes, it speaks volumes that it's a bunch of kids' animated movies predominantly, right? But that's the thing, right? We live in this generation. We're turning the TV on to keep the kids occupied, right? I do it all the time with myself. I just turn whatever's on, you know? But if you look at the marketing standpoint, right? What's going to affect a kid? Toy sales. Marketing does work on kids. You know, if you have a Minions movie and you're blasting the Minions toys all over Target, yeah, your movie's going to perform better than the Sea Beast and Orion of the Dark. because it's imprinting on the kids, So it doesn't shock me that it is anime. It shocks me Moana is still in there after like 3 years. That's actually insane. And the decision to make it TV, I'll never understand. Probably increase their profit margin quite a bit though, because it did cross $1 billion. But
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think there's something to be said that it's animated, that it's kid focused, and I think there's something to be said that they've all been theatrically. Oh my gosh, really? I cannot speak. I
It's
think
okay,
there's
buddy.
something to say that it's been theatrically released as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, it just, what also upsets me is that a lot of these were only streamed on Netflix, like Super Mario Brothers and The Boss Baby and Minions. These are all from Netflix only. And Netflix is the company that keeps trying to, like, kill theatrical by going to film festivals and buying up indie films so that they don't get theatrical releases, which I know we've talked about ad nauseum, but, having Margot Robbie come in and make the choice of turning down a, like, almost 8-figure deal to 8 figures is like hundreds of millions, right? Like a 7 to 8-figure deal of like, no, we're not going to do that because we want to be theatrical and taking less money. Like it comes down to that. And yet this service is the one that could profit the most from theatrical releases. And Netflix did a presentation earlier this week where they kind of talked about all the stuff coming out, movies and TV. And of course, one of the movies coming out in the fall is Glass Onion. They still haven't, or not Glass Onion, excuse me, Knives Out 3, Wake Up Dead Man. And they still haven't talked about if they're going to give that movie a theatrical release, even though the 2-week one they did for Glass Onion was wildly successful and they left money on the table pulling it out. So again, this is a topic that I get passionate about and I'm never going to fucking live it down. I don't understand. I don't understand how this keeps happening. And like, for example, Amazon is the only one that really kind of figured out what to do, even though they knew they would take a loss theatrically. But, this is crazy. Paramount Plus needs to fucking do it. Jesus, they're not going to be a streaming service if they don't get some money soon.
Well, what's crazy though too is I don't know if I think I have the right Paw Patrol movie that came out. Paw Patrol the movie came out in 2021 and it made only, it looks like 151 million at the box office.
Mm-hmm.
Which is nothing, but you're telling me 3 years later it's the 8th most watched thing, and does it have that same pull? Even I know it didn't do well in theaters, but does it have that same pull without it?
Yeah, and you also have to ask yourself, that was 2021, and probably in the middle of the pandemic recovery.
Exactly.
I know people who didn't go back to the movies until 2023, which is for me I could never, but for other people I understand. I think, honestly, the first big movie that people went to that aren't in, like, the film circles like you and me was No Way Home in December of 21. So that was...
Mine was Godzilla Kong 1.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm going to watch the monkey fight the lizard on the big screen.
And listen, as you should.
Yeah.
I immediately went to Unhinged and New Mutants as soon as theaters opened in 2020. And, of course, I did Tenet. But
what's Unhinged?
Isn't that the name of the Russell Crowe movie where he's the driver?
Oh, I never saw that. Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
You went back to the theaters for Unhinged?
You bet your ass, buddy. I went back right away. No, it wasn't. But like, it wasn't terrible. I'd probably give it like 2 stars. It was fine. I went back immediately as soon as they opened. I was like, oh shit, I gotta go. I gotta go to the movie. Why are you laughing this hard?
Because I'm waiting for like some big movie to come out that warrants going to see it on like a huge screen during the pandemic. Godzilla Kong, like that is the first huge one, and you're like, we got Russell Crowe in a truck. I gotta get my ass there day one.
Yeah, I did New Mutants day one. I did that day one. I did Tenet day one. Like, okay, let me defend myself. So 2020 was 2 years after I graduated college. And in high school, obviously before college, I lived in a smaller town and the movie theaters we had were trash. And we didn't always get all of like the big wide releases. We only got like blockbuster movies. So any like Oscar movies or anything like that, or smaller indie movies that I wanted to see, we never got them. So when I went to college in 2015 in a city, it was fucking movie-loving heaven because I got to go to see everything at the movie theater. And I got so used to the lifestyle, Nicholas. I spoiled myself that when the pandemic happened, I was crushed. I was crushed by the lack of movie going I had to do, especially because I worked at a movie theater at the time. And so I could go literally without driving anywhere. Like I could just clock off and then watch a movie if I wanted to. And so unhinged, and it was also, I guess, trying to be like, well, if I still want to have a job, I should probably go to the movies too. So there's that.
Unhinged has a 49% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Certifiably rotten, yet is touting a 77% popcorn meter.
As it should.
And it looks like worldwide about $37 million.
That's about right. That's about right.
I don't know how to operate the numbers the way you do, so I have no idea about budget going into that.
If you scroll down, I think under the summary tab or the box office tab, it's one of them. You'll see it.
Legs, domestic share, production budget was the production budget was 33 million, so it made 1.1 times its budget.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so do it.
Before we move on to the movie reviews, guys, this whole discussion has actually got me thinking about one of the saddest theatrical experiences I've ever had. And I'm gonna cut to a single here. In 2020, there were a lot of indie movies that came out as well. And if you know how hard it is to get distribution on a movie, it's so fucking hard. Like, there are no words to describe how hard it is, especially if you're an indie film. And there was this really lovely independent movie that came out in 2020 in the middle of the shit in COVID. And they probably worked for over a year to get theatrical distribution, only for it to happen in the middle of the pandemic. And they probably spent so much money on it that they couldn't back out. And that movie was called Yellow Rose. And it was about an immigrant who wanted to become a country singer while her whole family is about to get deported. And it was such a beautiful, independent film. And I watched it in theaters by myself, alone. And in the movie, I'm watching it, and yeah, the movie was sad. It's like the movie could have made you cry on the content alone. But man, I had a moment of, this movie's good. No one is here to watch it. And at the time, if you remember going back, there were serious conversations about movie theaters could be dead. And I just started crying. I'm watching this great movie that someone probably worked their ass off to get in theaters, and no one's here. If I wasn't here, it'd be playing to empty seats. And I just felt so sad about that. That crushed me when I was watching it. And I liked that movie. If you've never seen Yellow Rose, I like that movie a lot. But yeah.
Has a 87% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 76% audience score.
Yes.
Pulled that up. I'd never heard of it.
Yes. Another cute rom-com I saw was The Broken Hearts Gallery. I think that came out in 2020. I like that movie as well. That's actually one of my more favorite rom-coms of the past 10 years. I really like that film. That was underrated.
You want to talk about a quick sad theatrical experience, though?
Go on.
When I was a kid, when did Avatar 1 come out? 2009?
2009.
So what? That's 15 years ago?
You didn't have to say it with your chest like that.
I can't do math, guys.
Well, 10 years ago was 2015. So 16 years ago almost?
16 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was, however much math is there, because I cannot do math live, guys. I was 11. It seems like what the math is there. And I was so amped to go see Avatar. And I just could not get to the theater, right? Because I'm 11.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the will of my parents.
Yes.
And my dad's like, yeah, we're going to go see Avatar. And it just something came up, right? And we finally get to the theater. We were finally seated down. I'm 11. I'm amped. I've heard all the good reviews. I've got 3D glasses on because I was like, oh, I need to go watch the 3D version of this naturally. Right as the trailers end, they're doing the whole Regal. I think this is back when they had the roller coaster intro.
Yeah,
the roller coaster ends. It cuts to black. The movie starts. Fire alarm goes off.
Oh my God.
It took another month for me to get out to go see the movie.
Oh, that sucks.
Can you imagine the disappointment in an 11-year-old trying to just see Avatar?
Dude, I'm so sorry I went through that. I'll give you another one. When I went to go see Interstellar for the first time, I saw it on a date. I was on a date with my girlfriend at the time. And I'm watching Interstellar. Obviously, I'm loving it because that movie fucking rules. And as soon as it gets to the point where Matthew McConaughey gets to the space station in the future and they open the door for him to meet his daughter as an old woman, as soon as they opened the door, the power went out in the theater. And I couldn't finish the movie until it was on Blu-ray.
That's awful.
Oh,
That's rough.
terrible.
That's bad. That's
I was
bad.
so upset. And granted, the theater wasn't the theater's fault. The whole block lost power, but ugh.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. They gave me a free ticket to come back and see a movie, and I immediately used it on Dumb and Dumber 2. Because it came out like a few weeks later. The duality of man. That's what that is. Oh,
Yep,
man.
Real quick, though, before we move on, just some quick chats. Ryan Santos said, I think Nick Cage is behaving just like the College Humor sketch says he does when this gets pitched. I agree. That's a very fun sketch.
That is a great sketch.
Rain of Ors says, hey, everyone. Hope all is well. Thank you. Hello to you. Persephone CH, Regal still has the roller coaster. I, sir, am an AMC A-list member. And I only step into a Regal when I'm forced to.
I don't know about those damn Regals. No, listen, I'm just glad Regal got rid of their awful fucking movie quotes intro. Oh,
yeah.
That was hard to get through.
Then the last one here from Dominique Mason says, tell what why Stu Scream 1 and Roman Scream 3 returns to Scream 7. We unfortunately don't know.
Yeah, we couldn't tell you.
The articles just said that they're there.
Yeah, earlier in the stream, if you want to go back earlier, we break down like maybe how and why.
Theories, yeah.
But there's even the trades are just like, we don't know, we just know they're in it. And it's like, thank you, deadline.
Yeah, we did some speculation.
Yeah. But guys, what do you think about? We went so off topic. What do you think about all the top 10 streaming movies of 2024 being theatrical releases? And you know what? While we're at it, because we had some nice theatrical sharing experiences, what are some of your sad, give me fucking depressing theatrical experiences in the comments? That's what I want to see.
Does just watching ones. Wolfman this year count?
Oh, Nick. Oh, you heathen. You real heathen. But guys, fortunately, we have some movie reviews to do for you. We got to see two films. We got to see Companion, which is out now, and we got to see Hard Eyes a little bit early. Got to go to a screening of that. And Nicholas, let's do Companion first for the stream.
Companion?
Let's do Companion. And
Hold
then,
on, I was not prepared.
You're good.
I'm trying to pull up my Letterboxd.
You're good, buddy. Yes. Let me know when you have it up, because I forget the director's name, and I don't feel like pulling it up on my end.
Yep, I got it here. You want me to lead us in? We'll start with an intro here.
Lead us in, buddy.
All right. Companion is a 2025 release directed by Drew Hancock, which the plot is that a billionaire's death sets off a chain of events for Iris and her friends during a weekend trip to his lakeside estate. This stars Sophia Thatcher, Jack Quaid, Lucas Gage, Megan Shirley, and Harvey Guillen.
Thank you, Nick. And I believe this is his feature directorial debut, is it not?
That's a great question. I can click into his profile here. Yes. He directed the music video for Tenacious D Time Fixers.
Good.
That is it.
Awesome. So, we just saw the movie yesterday. And I got to say, I was a big fan of the marketing campaign. I, was a fan of the fact that it was produced by the same team that produced Barbarian, which I loved. And here's what I will say. I think that this movie is good. I think there are a couple things that prevent it from being great. I like it a little bit more the more I sit with it and the more I think about it. But when I walked out of the theater, I was very, halfway down the middle on it. Mm-hmm. I think that... Let's talk about performances first. So I think Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid do an excellent job. And I think their chemistry, or AKA, and I'm going to try not to spoil anything on the movie, and I won't spoil anything, but their chemistry and how their story is used with each other, I thought worked really well. I thought the performances pretty much all around were great. I thought that the setup and the story was really interesting. And I think that the character arc of the Sophie Thatcher character of Iris, I thought the character arc that she goes on was very satisfying. And throughout the movie, you are rooting for her. You want her to succeed. And if you want your movie, an audience to love your movie, a very key thing about that is, do we want this character to succeed? And you do. You really are rooting for her. I think that the first act of the movie is really strong, but it's the strongest of the movie. And I'll use that to kind of go into my negatives a little bit. When the first act of your movie is the strongest, it's hard to recover from that by the end of the film. And I do think that the second and third act have really great moments in them. And I think that they have really, interesting ways that the story goes, but it was not as strong as the first act. And I think what kind of hurts the other acts is the end of the first act kind of sets off this thing where there's a lot of expositional dialogue, but not done in a clever or fun way. It's characters literally sitting down, stopping the momentum of the movie, and having expositional conversations. It happens once at the end of the first act, and it happens even more throughout the movie. And something that I think was kind of hurtful to the movie in that regard, the biggest thing was pace. This movie, I'm not going to lie, is paced horribly. It's around 90 minutes long, and it felt way longer. And that may just be something of a feature directorial debut. Pacing is not a very easy thing to do, trust me. I've never made a feature film. The short films that we have made, the biggest struggle and why post-production can take 2 years sometimes is because you got to try to get the pacing right. It's incredibly difficult. And, other than that, those are my real only negatives of the film, but they do hinder the film quite a bit for me to call this a great film. But I do think it's a good film. I thought it was an intriguing film. And I will say this, go in knowing as little as possible. I think the more you know about it, the less intrigued you will be by the story. Mm-hmm. And I would give the movie probably 3 stars, personally, out of 5. Nicholas, take the reins.
Yeah, I didn't really know much about it going in. I know that there was talk online that the second trailer of the movie really gave away a lot. I kind of knew little bits here and there, but I tried to avoid that trailer as much as possible. Obviously, the big element I knew. But I think that the movie does offer a lot of other surprises in that regard. I would sort of mirror you a bit. I think I'm 2.5, 3 on a good day. I think the pacing really took me out of it. We were fortunate enough to do a double feature yesterday, and the first movie we saw, Hard Eyes, was roughly the same length, and I think it was paced significantly better, personally. I think Sophia Thatcher does an amazing job. I think she is fantastic in horror movies. I haven't really seen her outside of the horror genre much. Book of Boba Fett, but that I don't put on her.
No, and she's on a big show too. What's that big show? Is it
Yellow Jackets?
Yes.
I haven't heard, but I've heard she's phenomenal in it.
Same.
I was a huge fan of her performance in Heretic. I thought that movie was really great, and so I wasn't concerned about her going in. I'm not a big Jack Quaid fan. I'll be honest. I've watched everything with the boys. I'm not a big fan of Huey. Typically, I kind of go in against him. But I think in this movie, I didn't mind him as much. I think the character he plays, Jack Quaid, I bought into everything about him. And I think it worked really well. And I think that casting was actually a good choice. And I thought the performance was really well. I think the inner dynamic between the characters is good. There's some really fun, creative sort of set pieces there. But then the movie will stop and will spend way too long with a character trying to decide their next move, and that dialogue with everyone. But with that, you do get some great scenes. There's a great scene involving a cop. There's a great scene, I thought, involving a dinosaur costume. Not to get spoilers, but I think that it was a very interesting premise, a very strong premise. I think the execution fell a little bit flat for me. I would be intrigued with what he does next. I wasn't totally put off by this movie. I thought it was just fine. Yeah. Not good, not bad. I really don't have strong opinions either way. I don't think it's a movie I'd necessarily go and rewatch.
I got you. That's kind of how I felt when I walked out of the theater, but the more I slept with it and the more today as I was sitting with it, I did like it a little bit more and more, mostly just due to the main story of having the Sophie Thatcher's character and the themes of what that's exploring, and again, I don't want to spoil, but how that can be tied to people, like what she's going through. I thought that was a very strong point of the movie, and it does carry through. And I think that was kind of put it over the edge to positivity for me. But I do agree with most of what you're saying. And I will say there is an amazing underground reference to Jaws that I loved. And it's very, not on the nose, but I loved it. We love a good Jaws reference always. But yeah, I thought it was a good movie that I think could have been a lot better. But at the same time, I don't regret watching it.
Listen, I looked at it was his directorial debut. I looked at it on Drew Hancock's IMDb. Letterboxd does not account for TV shows, and that I'm looking at Letterboxd. The only other movie he wrote was Fred 3 Camp Fred.
Fuck yeah.
So if you're going from Fred 3 Camp Fred to this, and you can keep that level of progression into your next movie, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. No, yeah, 100%.
Am I gonna get like slandered for all the Fred 3 slandered? I don't think people.
No,
like that's not a hot take, right?
It's not a hot take. You'll be all right. You'll be all right.
All right.
But guys, what did you think of Companion? We'd love to see your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and we're gonna move on to our next movie review. And Nicholas, we also saw, as you mentioned, Hard Eyes. This film is directed by Josh Rubin, who has been kind enough to be interviewed on our show before. And I think he knows and he would respect that if we hated this film, we would be very honest about it, and we would say so on our channel. And I'm happy to report, Nicholas, this movie was kind of my shit. I really liked it. I liked this movie quite a bit. And this movie is perfect camp horror. And it's not camp horror in a way where it cheapens the horror or it makes the camp not as funny. It's balanced almost perfectly. And the way it's balanced is through the use of rom-com tropes. This is a rom-com movie that has a slasher killer placed in the middle. And the way it uses rom-com tropes to tell a horror story was so funny. Like, in the audience we saw it with, everyone was eating it up, like loving how funny and down-to-earth the movie was, with some meta jokes at the same time. And like I said, it doesn't cheapen the horror in that there are a couple really good scares, and the gore is awesome. It's very awesome. And the two leads, Olivia Holt and is it Mason Gooding? Is that his name?
Yes, from the Scream movies.
Yes, both do. Yeah, both do really excellent in the film. Their chemistry is great. Devon Sawa is also in the movie, which I did not know, and it was fun to see him of Final Destination fame. And I had a thoroughly great time watching the movie. And to go back to talking about pacing, this movie's paced wonderfully. It's almost perfectly paced. And, that's no surprise coming from Josh Rubin, because I think every film that I've seen him direct, where I've just seen Werewolves Within and this. I know that you also saw Scare Me, Nick. But Werewolves Within and this movie are both paced wonderfully. So it didn't shock me coming off of Werewolves Within how well paced the movie was. My only issue with the film is I think that the third act, particularly the last 10 minutes, go a little bit too far with suspension of disbelief, even for the ridiculous world that it's set in. It tries to kind of parody another franchise while also trying to just come up with an ending that's satisfying. And I would say it was half satisfying. And the reason I say that is because the ending I thought we were getting was kind of satisfying. And I'm not going to spoil what it was. But I was very happy and cool with what the proposed ending was originally. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to end the story, that this is the answer. And then when you get to the actual answer, it just kind of felt very oh, okay, we're doing this. But literally up until that point, thrill ride, absolutely love the movie. I would give it 3.5 stars, and my sleep 4 if I was feeling good. I had a great fun time with this movie. Nicholas, what are your thoughts on Hard Eyes?
No, I echoing what you said. I agree with the majority of it. I think that in terms of balancing the romance with the rom-com, I think at times that got a little cheesy, and some of the dialogue in the more romantic scenes I thought was very cringy. But I think that ultimately it works to service the story, because it really is just like a Hallmark rom-com movie with a slasher killer thrown into it. And so I think when it does have that sort of beat, it does work to its advantage to a certain extent. But in terms of the comedy beats, in terms of the horror beats, I mean, for me, I thought a majority of the jokes landed and very well with the audience as well. I think that the kills were all fresh and innovative. I really like the character design. I think with the slasher, that's really also a big part of it. You know, having the hard eyes, I thought was really unique. I just liked the design with the hard eyes and the mask personally.
Oh yeah, no, it looked really cool.
And one thing that did surprise me, and I don't know if it was marketed or maybe I just missed it, was the real dynamic between the two leads, Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding. I didn't know that going in, sort of what their relationship was to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that made it such an interesting premise for me, which then kind of leads more into the rom-com trope of everything.
Yes.
But no,
by the way, you did a great job explaining that without spoiling it. You did an excellent job.
I tried. No, but I think it's I've enjoyed everything that Josh Rubin's directed. I really liked Werewolves Within. I thought that was a really good take. Again, sort of balancing the comedy with the horror. But also Christopher Landon had a hand in writing this movie, and he's done Happy Death Day, Freaky, Happy Death Day to You. I believe Drop that's coming out. They just released a trailer, and I've been enjoying those movies. I think they're fun. I think it's showing that horror doesn't necessarily have to always be sort of all horror and gore all the time, that you can introduce these sort of comedy elements and really make it just like, I've had fun watching all of these movies, and I had a great time watching this.
Yeah, and going to what you said, like, I think Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You are okay. Dude, I fucking loved Freaky. I liked Freaky a lot. And going back to earlier in the show, that's another movie that came out in 2020 and was kind of criminally underseen. Mm-hmm. But yeah. No, but I echo a lot of your sentiments on Hard Eyes. I am going to watch this movie again, actually. I think I'm going to take Hannah on a date night when it comes out. After we see, we got to see Captain America. But after that, I think I'm going to take her to see Hard Eyes. Because it was a really, guys, it's a almost refreshing. Because usually when you have movies like this, that's going to be like a campy horror movie. It's just so poorly done. And this is, like, Josh Rubin, you could call him like the master of this craft of the camp horror movie. And it just did a phenomenal job. And I had so much fun watching it. And I'm glad it was good. Because, you never know with these things going in. And like you said, I'm going to bring more credit to the design. Awesome design. And I hope they franchise this and that Hard Eyes Killer can become sort of a horror icon. That would be really fun. That would be really fun to see. But yeah, guys, when you have the chance to see Hard Eyes, please let us know what you thought in the comments down below. We would love to see what you guys thought. Nicholas, before we end the show today, were there any other questions in the live chat or anything else to cover?
No, we're caught up on the live chat. I'm going to go ahead and end a poll that I started, though, at the beginning of the show, which was Best Scream Movie. They only gave me 4 options, so I did Scream, Scream 2, Scream 5, Scream 6, and with 9 votes in, 89%, the original Scream wins, with 11% going to Scream 2. So with that, we're going to end the poll there. Again, links to the articles and as well as our social media channels can be found in the description.
Yes.
And we look forward to, we have a couple of reviews coming out soon, and I think that's really all I have. Tune in Monday for our next live show.
Yes, tune in Monday for the next live show. We'll be posting movie reviews and clips from this episode on the channel in case you missed some and you just want to watch the clip versions. You can also check out our vertical clips on Shorts and on TikTok and Instagram, if I remember Instagram. And with that down,
for the people watching, if you're just tuning in, please like and subscribe to keep up with it if you haven't already. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and let's get us to that 5K.
Less than 100 away from 5K, everybody. And also, if you like audio only, we're on your podcasting app of choice. You can find us on there. And with that being down, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.